Hello, Damien, Scout, and Connor. How are you?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
How are you doing?
Not bad, thank you. Congratulations on A Creature Was Stirring, arriving in theaters on December 8th and will also be available on VOD December 12th. Damien, I'm going to go straight up to the big question here. The creature design, that porcupine-esque looking monster, what was the concept behind that? How many designs did you go through before landing on that? And I noticed it's all practical effects, right? So what were the challenges of putting that together?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very passionate about practical effects. All of my horror movies are always going to have practical makeup and creature effects in them. I don't like to rely on CG too much if possible. And there's a real opportunity in this movie because when I read the script, it's like, wow, this monster is going to be unique. It's going to be something nobody has ever seen before. So that was really exciting for me working with a concept designer and coming up with something that looks that unique. So I was working with a designer named Michael Epinette, and we went back and forth with different pictures of creatures and other insects and different kinds of fauna from or flora and fauna from around the world, and looking at their features like tentacles and claws and horns and different things that these animals have, and building those features into this monster. So when we reached the end of it, we had a glorious beast that bears a resemblance to what you see in the movie, but it was sort of the money is no object version. So by the time we got into production, we had to then turn the concept art over to our design team, and then they had to build it. So engineering something like that within the constraints of your budget, presents certain challenges. So they have to, they have to basically say, okay, well, here's what we can do for this. We can make it look like this and do this and that, and when it rolls, that's one version of the monster. When it's on its feet, that's another version of the monster. And that's how we came into the monster that you see on screen. But there is a lot of similarity to the original concept.
It needed its own dressing room, man. It was everywhere. We were constantly like stepping over. We're like, what is the oh, it's the tail. Okay, oh, go over. Oh, it's the head.
And
Just
actually,
in a corner.
the rolling version just reminded me of when we were shooting the scene in the garage, and like I can't remember which crew member was just rolling this fucking thing like a tire, trying to get the thing to actually pass the camera in the correct way. It was very funny.
It took a lot of work. I mean, that shit was heavy, man. It was
Oh yeah.
heavy. When I see it through the fireplace, I remember like Damon was like, we can't see it hard enough, and these guys were just like, okay. Like they're trying to like hold it to get it to work. It was a group effort, man.
That's for sure.
Scout, this is obviously not your first rodeo in the genre. Big fan of your version of Laurie Strode in Rob Zombie's Halloween reboot. Your character in this movie, Liz, is very interesting though because she's very deeply devout or religious with tattoos and Bible verses and all. Do you share some things in common with Liz, or is that a new territory for you to be playing somebody, a believer like Liz?
Uh, Very much of a challenge for me. Extremely. I had to do a lot of research. I know my father loved it. My father was like, finally. um, but yeah, so it was definitely much of a challenge, but that's kind of what drew me to it. I'd never played a character like her, and I've said this before on my podcast. I've struggled with my faith. So it was a really interesting learning experience for me, definitely.
Awesome. And Connor, big fan of Gossip Girl, by the way. Eric was such a fan favorite. I just want to let you know that. But I want to ask you about your character, Corey, in this film. My God, you got pretty banged up in this film a lot. You got hit by a nailed bat, and then porcupine spike stabs your shoulder, whatever. I mean, I get that horror movies are supposed to be physically demanding, but my goodness gracious, how challenging was that filming those scenes? And what's it like playing a character who can't seem to catch a break?
Um, the physical stuff is can be exhausting or is exhausting, but also the more that you get to actually do as an actor, the easier your job is. So I never mind being able to move or fall or get, like I'm still a little kid, and acting to me at its best is still just fucking around with your friends and pretending to get stabbed or beat up. So to get to do that on set is just it's a lot of fun. And you know, the most fun I think, or the cathartic element of doing horror specifically, is just that, you know, we don't, thankfully, most of us don't deal with mortal terror on a regular basis. Obviously, there are people that do, but for the most part, or at least I don't. So but there's still this primordial urge, I think, or this, you know, DNA memory of, you know, like life or death survival that we all have as humans. So to get to tap into that in a safe environment, that's why you like roller coasters. That's why you like going to horror films as an audience member. And it's sort of the same thing as an actor, to really work yourself up to that place, and try to force yourself to believe that you could die at any minute while also being incredibly safe, is actually feels really good, emotionally. In the same way that, you know, crying your eyes out is euphoric. It
Yeah,
feels
it's
good.
therapy, man. It's a big
Yeah.
old playground of therapy.
Yeah.
Well, was that was you, right? Rocking that Green Lantern suit?
Damn right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
sexy beast right there.
yeah. So that was my question actually for both Damien and Connor. Damien, talk to me about the reason behind integrating Green Lantern into the story. Did you ask permission from DC or something like that? And Connor, what was it like rocking that outfit? Were you always a fan of Green Lantern? Damien?
Well, you know, Charm is a comic book fan, so she reads the comics, and you know, Faith ends up picking up and reading that comic, you know, from her bedroom. And you know, when she begins to fantasize about this guy that back in the day she, you know, murdered, but also liked. You know, that her fantasy plays out in the form of him showing up as Green Lantern. I love how weird it is. I think that's really fun. I like to, again, you know, be weird, be different. You know, so it was fun for me. I thought that was a really fun day because like Connor just crushed that. It was did such a good job.
Well, I never read, I never really read Green Lantern, but I know the conceit of the character, and it made a lot of sense for the film, because it's a character who wills things into existence, and that's what Faith is doing. Uh, um, and you know, as far as the practical effects go, the last time we saw Green Lantern on screen was a fully CGI outfit. This time, that shit is real. You know, we got $25 at a Halloween store, and it looks unbelievable. Looks better than the other movie version, and that's why you always just do the suit for real.
And trust me, the crew was not
They loved
disappointed, Connor.
They loved it. No, I know.
I bet they were geeking out. Definitely, I would be. Now, Scout, you shared a lot. I mean, Scout, a lot of the fans of This Is Us are gonna be surprised by Chrissy Metz's performance in this film, and I was shocked too. And so, and you had that intense scene with Chrissy where things got confrontational and physical. You had to literally fight. How was that experience working with Chrissy? Did it surprise you that she could play such a character? And how challenging was it to pull off that fight scene?
You know, it didn't surprise me, man. She's a talent, man. She really is. She's a wonderful actor, a wonderful human. So by that point that we did that scene, we had already become fast friends.
Mm.
I absolutely adore her, and I love anything physical. When it comes to acting, I love to do my own stunts. So I was really excited to be able to like tussle with her. You know, I think she surprised me, but she shouldn't have. I mean, she really gave her all, and it's such a difference from the character that she played in This Is Us, and I think that's what's going to be so beautiful and shocking for her fans. It's going to be able to see, you know, what she can do and how she can push herself. But I had such a blast doing that scene. I don't know if she did, but who knows?
Damien, I need to ask you about the interesting way that you play with colors and lighting and visuals. You know, it made it feel like it's a dreamscape or you're in an alternate dimension of something. I can't quite put my finger on it, but talk to me about the reason or purpose behind making this film look that way visually.
Well, it wasn't originally intended to be a Christmas movie, but you know, in the process of rewriting it, we set it at Christmas time. So that opened us up to just sort of naturally having access to those colors in the frame. and I had this vision for using lasers as part of like the part of like the sort of like a call to electric synapses in the brain, because Faith is imagining all of this stuff. This is all in her head. So I like to use that. I got to use these lasers, which is really fun, to create a really cool practical effect, all in camera. And then as far as, you know, as far as like, you know, the execution of all of this, I worked very closely with my DP, Alexander Chinisi, to really make this feel like an 80s throwback. You know, we went with this deep, saturated cerulean blue that was characteristic of, you know, the horror movies from the 80s, and very saturated colors on set, lighting with older lights and gels, the kinds of stuff that you don't see as much today. And we really pushed it hard. And in fact, he had on his monitor on the camera a little sticky that said "fuck rules, take risks." So that was in our head the entire time. How can we do this and make it look different, special, unlike anything that you're used to seeing today?
I think that was a
Awesome.
motto for the whole movie, man.
Yeah, it's our mantra.
Yeah, that was it.
I have a final question for all three of you. So we're gonna go Scout, Connor, and Damien last. You know, this is a creature monster movie, but it's also a bit of a psychological thriller. I'm not just talking about the ending, but that dinner table scene alone, that conversation got pretty deep about believe in God versus the rationalization against it. And then there's this thing about wanting to save those who don't want to be saved and all that. Were those profound themes something that's intentionally wanted to be conveyed in the film, or am I reading too much into it?
I think that the bigger message, I think, in the movie has to do with family dynamics and addiction. And I think that addiction is a very misunderstood affliction. I think that it's also very relatable, sadly. So is, you know, family estrangement. I know a daughter estranged from her addict mother. So I think that for me, I would like people to connect with this daughter who was born into this horrible situation and who's trying to escape. And we have empathy for that, but we also have a lot of empathy for her mother, who was suffering from her own demons, her own monster, and that was the addiction from her past. So that is really that is really the bigger message for me that I hope people can walk away with. And again, I don't like to be preachy about this stuff. It's just like, this was just what the story was, right? This is where these characters were, and you know, they're empathetic, and I think that's important, having empathetic characters.
I always loved that scene. I said it just in an earlier conversation that sort of, I mean, all the script stuck out to me, but that scene kind of in particular, in terms of the writing and the dynamic. But to me, that argument, or just sort of the argument of the film, is about coping mechanisms. And faith is one way to cope with the traumas and the fear of life. Anti-religious points of view are also another way to cope with things. And that, to me, that's that argument between the two sides of Faith's brain, because she's having this argument with herself when she's having it with Liz, of how do I process, how do I cope with my perceived, or I guess legitimate, failures as a mother, and how do I rationalize that to myself. And obviously things have gotten so bad for her inside that this is how far she has to go to allow herself to believe that she's doing a good job. It's like literally just creating people out of thin air, as she tries and never was able to cope with the fact that she killed this guy, and ruined this young woman's life, and then is now perpetuating this trauma on her daughter. So yeah, the argument of, yeah, how do you cope with your own failures as a parent, as a human being, and I find that discussion really interesting.
So deep, so deep.
Yeah, man, fuck. Drop the mic on that one.
Oh man, I'm geeking out. Big fan of Halloween and Gossip Girl. I'm geeking out right now. For my fans at home, everybody go check out A Creature Was Stirring, arriving in theaters on December 8th and will be available on VOD December 12th. Damien, Scout, and Connor, thank you for talking to me, and congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
You too.